Well, it seems the National Consumer Commission has put the brakes on a decision to prosecute Ford in South Africa. This is after the company approached the NCC to reach a negotiated settlement that could run into millions of rand. Some Ford owners have started legal proceedings against the car manufacturer. Well, more than 4,000 Cougars were recalled after a number of them were destroyed in fires. So, what does this mean for consumers pursuing legal action against Ford? Joining us now is the National Consumer Commission's Tezi Mabuza, who joins us from our Pretoria studio. Ms. Mabuza, thank you very much for your time. So, what does this decision, you entering into negotiations with Ford, mean for those who are pursuing the company legally?
I think this would be a plus for them, Oli, in such a way that when we are investigating a matter, is that we want to look at the prohibited conduct. And the issue of the consent agreement, I wouldn't say that it's a settlement. It's a consent agreement which is part of prosecution processes that allows the Commission that if any of the parties during an investigation feels that they want to enter into a plea, it allows that, the Act allows that. In this instance, what we have is that we have investigated this matter, and then the supplier, which is Ford South Africa in this instance, approached the NCC and say that, you know what, there are certain agreements in relation to the conduct that you are talking about wherein would like to plead. And this is part of our prosecution. And in that consent agreement is that both parties would have to firstly start with determining what is the prohibited conduct. And once we agree with that prohibited conduct, what will happen is that we will then agree on the terms. And after agreeing on the terms, we will still file that matter, like any other matter, before the tribunal, so that that matter, either the tribunal can decide to either agree with the terms as we have stipulated them, or either it will allow that actually allow the parties to come and appear before it, so that we can actually, the matter can be heard. And they can, in the same process as well, ask if maybe we can make changes to that consent agreement that we are proposing to enter into.
That concern agreement, Ms. Mabuza, we understand could run into millions of rand. Do you have a ballpark figure for us? And why did you choose this route?
Oli, in this matter is that the matter is very complex. First of all, we're dealing with two layers of issues here. We are dealing with some particular conducts or a conduct that I would never disclose at this moment, that we feel that is against or it's in violation of the Act. And secondly, you will see that there's also the conduct itself relate with the conduct against the state that we are dealing with, that deals with a fine or an administrative fine. And secondly, it will be maybe the issue of consumers that have suffered detriment. And in this case, we would never be able to say what is the ball figure, the ball figure in this instance, because people were affected differently. Some of them, in the process of actually the investigation, you would realize that some of the consumers, it was made good for them wherein they actually received their new cars, or maybe they upgraded into other cars, but others suffered materially beyond the issues of the cars. So in that way is that if we enter in that consent agreement, it would actually give consumers a bigger leeway for them to negotiate after that has been agreed at the tribunal.
All right. Thank you very much for explaining that to us. That was the National Consumer Commission's Tezi Mabuza.